The topic for this morning's study, as you announced, is desire and consequences, mostly based on the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. I have a lot of material. This topic can be divided into 7 parts. I have 7 parts. First of all, what is desire? Second, why desire comes, the root cause of desire. And 3, how desire arises in the mind. And 4, distinction between good desires and bad desires. And 5, consequences of desire. What happens if the desire is fulfilled? What happens if it is not fulfilled? 6th, why do we have desires? Why can't we just keep on fulfilling them? And last topic is how to give up desires. So we'll see how much of it we can cover. So we'll begin with the first topic. What is desire? Desire is a feeling of incompleteness, a feeling of emptiness, something lacking, something I want to have that I don't have. It's a search for happiness, a search for fullness. And desire motivates all actions. Everything that we do, good and bad, is motivated by some desire. Motivated by desire, people do all kinds of things. People acquire money, property, possessions to find fulfillment, hoping that they will bring happiness. People seek happiness in relationships, in spouse, in family, in children, friends, pets. People seek happiness in sensory pleasures through all the sense organs, food, music, seeing beautiful forms, pleasure through sense, other senses, and recreation of all kinds, movies, dance, music, games, all of these people try to do to find happiness. And some type of very strange, what may appear to be strange things also people do, that brings them happiness, a feeling of thrill, some joy. People like to do things like bungee jumping, etc. Enjoyment of power, position, fame, acclaim, acquiring distinction in some pursuit, in one's own profession, in science, in politics, in sports, scholarship, hoping that this will bring happiness, material rewards, fame and satisfaction. All of these desires are simply an indication of something that is lacking, something that is empty, that needs to be filled. You want to become full, complete. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, 3 kinds of desires are mentioned. First is Lokaishana. Aishana means desire. Lokaishana means desire for enjoyment of this world, happiness in this world and next world also. First kind of desire, Lokaishana, desire for worldly enjoyment, here and hereafter. Second is Putraishana, desire to have children, progeny, hoping that they will bring happiness, children, grandchildren. The third is Vittaishana, desire for money or wealth, hoping that acquisition of wealth, property, money, everything that money can buy, that will bring happiness. All these various desires are simply manifestations of one desire, and namely to experience our own inherent perfect nature. Upanishad says, Vedanta says, you are that right now. We are not what we think we are, namely bodies and minds. We are that Sachidananda, we are that Brahman, Tattvamasi, that thou art, Upanishad says. I am Brahmasmi, Upanishad says. I am that. I've always been that, I am that now, I will always be that only, nothing else. But somehow we are not experiencing that fullness, that divine nature. We are experiencing limitations. So desires are simply a manifestation of that limitations. Something is lacking, something is missing. My life will be happy. I'll find happiness if I complete that by acquiring this or doing that. That is desire. The second topic we want to study is what is the cause? Why do desires arise in the mind in the first place? Vedanta says that our true nature, eternal, infinite, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, Upanishad, Taittiriya Upanishad says. It is Satyam means always existent at all times. It is consciousness, it is infinite. And it is complete, perfect, full, eternal, one without a second. Ekameva Advitiyam. Chandogya Upanishad says. There's no second thing, there's no second entity that can enhance in any way our happiness, that can add anything to our happiness because it is already infinite bliss. Anantananda. If we have this experience, then there can be no desire. Nothing, there is nothing to obtain, nothing to do that can increase our happiness anymore. It's already infinite. We don't have that awareness. We are experiencing limitation. That's why desires arise in the mind. In the 17th chapter, in the 3rd chapter of the Gita, 17th verse, 317, Sri Krishna explains such a person who is experiencing his full divine nature, giving up the ignorance that he is the body and the mind. He is experiencing so much joy that there is nothing else to be done to be acquired. Chapter 3, verse 17. Jastu atmaritare vasyat atmatriptascha manavaha atmaniyeva santushta tasya karyam na vidyate. There is nothing to be done, nothing to be acquired, nothing to be done to find more happiness. Already enjoying infinite bliss of the self with him. Atmariti, enjoying the self, enjoying the bliss of the self, infinite bliss of the self. Atmaniya santushta, all content with self. There is nothing more that can add to his or such a person's happiness. For such a person, there is nothing to be done. Tasya karyam na vidyate. Nothing to be done, nothing to be acquired, nothing to be experienced. This self-knowledge is inherent in us. We have always been, will always be that. But this knowledge somehow remains covered. We can say by the power of Maya or whatever, and we are not experiencing it. That's why we experience emptiness. We have desires. This knowledge which is inherent in us is covered by a layer of ignorance. In the Gita, Bhagavad Gita, verse number 38, chapter 3, verse 38, Sri Krishna gives 3 examples how knowledge is covered by ignorance. Knowledge of our true nature is covered by ignorance, just as fire is covered by a thick cloud of smoke. Dhumena vriyate vannihi. Dhuma means smoke. Vanni means fire. Fire is there, but we don't see the fire. We see a huge cloud of smoke. Just as a huge cloud of smoke covers the fire, in the same way, ignorance covers the knowledge of the divine self within us. Vedanta says that this ignorance is ascribed to Maya, the power of Brahman to cover the self and to project the world in its place. In the Kathopanishad, Yama says to Nachiketa, this Atman is present in all, always, at all times, but it remains hidden from you. Yesha sarvesha bhutesha gudaha Atma na prakashate. Sarveshu bhuteshu, in all the beings, without any exception, Even in the most ignorant person, wicked person, the same self is there in the same way, but it remains hidden from you. Na prakashate, it does not come out and publicize it. So look at me, I am Atman, I am self, I am complete. It doesn't say that one. If we have slightest desire of any kind, that means we are not experiencing our pristine state, which is our inherent state. We have not realized our true self. Swamiji, when he was giving his lectures on Jnana Yoga, in one lecture called The Atman, Its Bondage and Freedom, Swamiji said like this: so long as there is desire or want, it is a sure sign that there is imperfection. A perfect, free being cannot have any desire. God cannot want anything. If he desires, he cannot be God. He will be imperfect. Therefore, it has been taught by all the teachers, desire nothing, give up all desires and be perfectly satisfied. To conclude this section, ignorance of our true nature or absence of self-knowledge is the root cause of all desires. Desires are endless. If you fulfill one desire, the same desire comes back again after some time, or another desire arises in its place. Satisfaction of a desire gives only temporary relief. For a short period, we feel fulfilled, satisfied. That short period when we are satisfied after fulfilling a desire, when there is no desire, that is the happy moment. Happiness is absence of desire. Desires cannot be quenched by fulfilling them. As we saw last time in Yajati story, King Yajati, he went on fulfilling desires for a long time, 1.5 lifetimes, borrowing youth from his son also. Still, at the end of the long period of long duration of satisfying all kinds of desires that only a king can satisfy with all his resources, still there were desires. He was not free from desire. Then he says to his wife Devayani, being a thoughtful, insightful person, King Yajati says to his wife Devayani, so I have enjoyed so many desires, more than any other human being can ever hope to enjoy. But still they have not gone. He says, it is futile to quench desire, to become free from desires by fulfilling them. They will not go, they will come back with greater strength. This famous statement in the Mahabharata, also in the Bhagavata Puranam, Yajati story comes in both places. The Yajati says, Najata kama kamanam upabhogena shamyate. Desires will not be quenched by fulfilling the desires. Havisha Krishna Vartmeva Bhuya Eva Bhivardhate. It is futile to get rid of desires by fulfilling them, just as it is futile to quench a fire by pouring ghee on the fire. It only becomes a bigger fire. Now, the next thing we want to understand is how the desires arise in the mind. If we know how they arise, then we can deal with them. We can try to deal with desires if we know the cause. In the absence of self-knowledge, there is a constant unconscious urge to experience our pristine divine nature. This urge is there. I am full, complete. Scriptures say, but I am not experiencing it. I want to experience my full nature. Complete, perfect, infinite bliss I want to experience. That urge is there. That urge manifests itself in the form of various desires. The desire for sensory enjoyment, the desire for food, the desire for property, possessions, children, progeny, they are all nothing but a distorted forms of the ever-present craving, urge to go back to our pristine divine nature, eternal Sachidananda nature. In general, there are two sources from which desires arise. First of all, external stimuli. When we see somebody eating ice cream, we like eating ice cream also. I was not thinking about ice cream, but I saw someone. I am passing in front of the ice cream shop, ice cream parlor. Then seeing that object generates desire in my mind also. I also want to eat ice cream. It makes me happy. Seeing somebody eating food or going to a restaurant, desire for food comes. Seeing a beautiful person, seeing somebody playing with a child, seeing somebody driving an expensive car, all of these things, external stimuli, they generate desire in our minds. But those desires have always been there, hidden in our subconscious mind. So the second more important source of desires are the stored impressions. They're always there in our subconscious mind. And in the absence of external stimulus, also they will come to the mind. When we see something outside, they come to the surface, they come to the conscious mind. Usually these two things act in concert. The external stimuli, when we see something or somebody which produce a desire in our minds, even in the absence of that, sitting in an empty room, nothing is there, nobody is there, still desire will come from the mind. From where? From the stored impressions already present in the mind. Merely thinking about an object or experience creates an attachment towards that object or experience. And once that attachment comes, attraction comes, that culminates in becomes an articulated desire in our minds. And once the desire arises in the mind, then we are in a no-win situation. If we fulfill the desire, it will become stronger and come back again. It will not go away. For a short time, there is satisfaction. But again, that fades away and the desire comes back again. If you fulfill the desire, it will not go back. If you don't fulfill the desire, it gives rise to frustration, anger, and anger in its time creates a lot of other problems. We'll see that consequences of desire in the later section. So it is not, when the desire already comes in the mind, it's very difficult. We are in a very difficult situation. Before we go to how to deal with the desires, we'll discuss the distinction between good desires and bad desires. Although all desires are signs of imperfection, every desire, even the desire to know God, is a sign of incompleteness because I don't know God. Even the desire to achieve liberation is a sign of imperfection because I don't have liberation right now. That's why I have the desire. But those are good desires. So Sri Ramakrishna talks about good desires and bad desires. All desires are indications of ignorance of our true nature. However, some desires are good in quotes, and help us to move forward in our spiritual life. If you fulfill them, the mind will become calm and pure, and they will not bother us that much. Some desires are bad, because if we fulfill them, our mind becomes agitated, and a series of unwanted consequences ensue. And we get caught up in a downward spiral from which it is difficult to recover. Sri Ramakrishna says, this in the Gospel, page 592, the desire for bhakti, devotion, cannot be called desire. Though it is a desire, it's a good desire. If we fulfill the desire for bhakti, we become devoted, our devotion enhances, becomes pure, and that is the goal to be achieved, pure devotion. For example, Mahatma Gandhi's desire to make India free from colonial rule was a good desire. It culminated in political freedom of the country. Madame Curie's quest to investigate radioactivity, in spite of many difficulties and absence of resources, is an example of a good desire. It resulted in the discovery of radium and subsequent discoveries. Our desire to get up in the morning, early in the morning to meditate is a good desire. Our desire to seek holy company, to do charity, are all examples of good desires. Bad desires, well, we don't have to give examples of bad desires. We know what they are. Speaking of good desires, Sri Ramakrishna said, without desire, body cannot live. This is on page 397 in the Gospel. Without desire, the body cannot live. I had one or two desires. I prayed to the Divine Mother, O Mother, give me the company of those who have renounced woman and gold, seeking holy company. I said further, I should like to enjoy the company of the Jnanis and Bhaktas. So give me a little strength that I may walk hither and thither and visit people. So his desire was to have company of devotees and Jnanis and Bhaktas, and he prayed to Divine Mother to give that, fulfill that desire. Now the next question is a tricky question. How about desire for making money? Is it a good desire or is it a bad desire? If you have desire to make money, the answer is it depends. For a sannyasi, for a monk who has renounced everything and seeking only God, desire for making money is very bad. It harms his spiritual life. But for a householder, it's a good desire. It's essential to make money to take care of the family. In his Karma Yoga lectures, Swamiji says, money is not bad in good hands. It can be used for constructive purposes to help people. Money is good, but depends upon who has the money, how the money was made, how the money is being spent. If the money is made through dharmic ways, morally pure ways, dharmic ways, and spent for dharmic purposes, then it is good. If it is made through adharmic means, unrighteous means, immoral, illegal means, then it is bad. And Swamiji continues, Swamiji says, a householder who does not earn money is immoral. Another time when M. Mahendranath Gupta, the author of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, when M. Asked Sri Ramakrishna, is it okay for me to make more money? M was not in a very financially in a good condition. He had separated from his family, from joint family, and his job did not bring a great deal of money. He was the headmaster of a high school or a junior college. And he asked this question of Sri Ramakrishna, sir, is it okay to make more money for me? Sri Ramakrishna said, yes, it's all right to make more money for you. Otherwise, if you don't make money, who will take care of your family? Who will pay your bills? You have to make more money. So the question about money depends. Money is necessary for householders to maintain the family, to take care of the children and responsibility, to cover medical expenses, children's education, so many things. They have to generate enough income. If they don't do, then they will be not doing their duty properly. There was one instance which is described in the very first chapter of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. There was a gentleman, his name is not known. He's referred to as Pratap's brother. One day, Pratap's brother goes to Sri Ramakrishna in Dakshineshwar, and he says to Sri Ramakrishna, sir, I want to stay with you in the Dakshineshwar Kali temple, and I want to meditate on God. Please give me permission. Please make it possible for me to stay in this temple. Sri Ramakrishna asked him, it's good, but what about your family? Do you have family? Pratap's brother says, yeah, I have children, and I have a wife and a couple of children, a few children. Then Sri Ramakrishna says, when you are meditating here, who's going to take care of your family? What will happen to them? Scolded him. He said, go back, get out of here, go back. First, get a job, make some money, bring your wife and children from your father-in-law's house, and take care of them. You married, you got wife and you got children, and you want your father-in-law to take care of them. You bring them back and take care of them. And then in your time, when you spare time, you come and meditate all you want. So for householders, it is necessary, it's a requirement to make money through dharmic means and spend for dharmic purposes. Now we'll continue. Bad desires. Bad desires deprive one of peace of mind. They cause agitation in the mind. They deepen our ignorance of the self and make us forget the goal of life. Bad desires, if we fulfill them. The satisfaction that comes from fulfilling desires is fleeting. For a short time, we become free from desires, and that time, short time, when no desire in our mind, that is the time when we are happy. But that does not last very long. Very soon, the same desire will come back, or some other desire will come back, and again we have a feeling of incompleteness, unhappiness, and striving to find happiness. When we fulfill certain kinds of desires, they weaken the body and the mind. There was a great king. His name was Bhartrhari. He was a great spiritual person also. And this king Bhartrhari composed 3 very well-known books. Singara Shatakam, 100 verses describing the beauty. And then Niti Shatakam, 100 verses describing the moral virtues that we have to cultivate, Niti. And 100 more verses called Vairagya Shatakam. 100 verses describing the virtues of Vairagya, renunciation. In that Vairagya Shatakam, there is a very nice verse. There are 100 verses. One of them, I chant only a part of it. Bhogana bhukta vayameva bhukta Krishnana jirna vayameva jirna. Swami Vivekananda was fond of this. He quoted this verse in one of his lectures. There Bhartrhari says, Bhogana bhukta. We wanted to enjoy all the pleasures. Bhoga means pleasures, sensory pleasures, food and other things. We wanted to enjoy them, but we were ourselves consumed by the desires. Fulfilling desires will deplete the body and the mind, make the mind weak, and serve as a great obstacle to spiritual life. Bhogana bhukta, enjoyments were not enjoyed. We ourselves were consumed in that process. Trishnana jirna, Trishna means thirst for enjoyment. That did not go away. As in the case of Yayati, even if we fulfill all the desires, if we can, they will not go away. The thirst will continue and become more. Vayame vajirana, we ourselves were digested. Bad desires make one commit all kinds of sins. When Arjuna asked Sri Krishna in the 3rd chapter of the Gita, there's a very important question in verse number 36, chapter 3. Arjuna asked Sri Krishna, what is the reason why people do bad deeds? Why people commit sinful deeds, knowing that it is bad, they don't want it to wait. Still, in spite of themselves, they end up committing all kinds of bad desires and get into trouble. What is it that makes people do bad deeds? Why people do commit sinful deeds? Sri Krishna says in answer, there's only one thing that makes people commit bad deeds. It has 2 forms, like 2 sides of a coin. Kama esha, krodha esha. It is called kama. One aspect of it, desire. Second aspect of it is krodha, anger. They are actually one, appearing as 2. Rajovana samadbhavaha, born of rajas in our personality. Mahashano mahapapma. It will devour everything. It will gobble up our sense of sanity, propriety, our ability to think clearly will be robbed, taken away by the desire and anger. Vidyena meha vairanam. This is the true enemy of man. Now we'll go to the next topic, consequences of desire. There are two verses in the second chapter of the Gita. I think of these as 5-star verses in the Gita. Gita has many such verses. Two of these in the second chapter, 62 and 63. Verses 62 63 in chapter 2. These two verses come in the last part of the second chapter, the segment where Sri Krishna describes the qualities of a Sthita Prajna, a sage of steady wisdom. There it describes how desire arises in the mind, what causes desire to arise in the mind in the first place, and what happens when desire arises, what happens if we fulfill them, what happens if we don't fulfill them, what happens. A series of events happen. Those are nicely described. The entire psychology of desire and the consequences is succinctly described in these two verses, verses 62-63 in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. There Sri Krishna says how desire arises in the mind. First thing, dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu upajayate. Dhyana means thinking, meditating or thinking, simply thinking. Vishaya means sense object. When we think about a sense object, even if the sense object is not present in our vicinity, we are sitting in an empty room, there is no object, there is nobody, there is nothing there. Still I think about some object. Mind itself projects thoughts from its own stored impressions. I think about food, or think about some other object, car or something. When we just think about a sense object, even if the object is not there, then what happens? Dhyayato vishayan pumsa teshu sangha upajayate. In those sense objects, sangha means attachment. Attachment arises. Attachment means attraction towards sense object comes the moment we think about it, even if it is not there. When this attachment comes, that turns into anger, manifests as anger. That manifests as a desire. Sangaha sanjayate, sangat sanjayate kamaha. From this attraction to that sense object which arises in the mind, that attraction turns into articulated anger in our minds. Sangat sanjayate kamaha. Kama means desire. Once the desire comes in the mind, then we are in a difficult situation. Either way, it will be difficult. If you fulfill the desire, it will come back, it will not go away. For a short time, it will go away. Then again, it will come back stronger, requiring more fulfillment, demanding more fulfillment. If you fulfill it, as it happened in the case of Yayati. If you don't fulfill the desire, then it turns into frustration, anger. Kama sanjayate krodha. Krodha means anger will come. If you don't, as time will come, you keep on fulfilling desire. A stage will come and you cannot fulfill the desire, either because the object is not anymore available, or generally object is available, but my ability to fulfill will diminish and go away. In old age, what happens? All the objects of desire are available to us. Money is there in the bank, food is there in the kitchen, children are there, grandchildren are there, everything is there, house is there, property is there, money is there. But I will be unable to enjoy any of them because of my inability. Physically, body becomes weak, and the stage will come when, though everything is there present, my ability to enjoy will diminish and vanish, and I can't enjoy anything. I'm lying down on the bed, intubated, and all those things, and everything is there, but no happiness. The stage will come. The stage will come and we cannot enjoy fulfill desire. When we cannot fulfill the desire, then what happens? Krodhat bhavati sammohaha. Desire, unfulfilled desire will turn into delusion, causes delusion in our minds. Delusion means inability to think properly, inability to distinguish right and wrong. Anger, if not controlled, if not fulfilled, causes delusion, robs us of our sanity. When anger comes, when the in a fit of anger, people really become insane. They suffer temporary insanity. Defense lawyers plead temporary insanity for their clients. That's true. When anger comes, a person forgets everything. Forgetfulness of memory will come. We forget where we are, who we are, what is the right thing to do, what is the right thing to say, what not to say. All of those things shall be forgotten. Smriti Bhramsha will come. Then we forget everything. Smriti Bhramsha, next step is Buddhi Nasha. Buddhi Nasha means our intellectual power will go away. We are very high intelligence. We can clearly see what is right, what is wrong. We are very intelligent. But when you are in the fit of anger, we forget everything and we end up doing things which we would not ordinarily dream of doing in our saner moments. We end up saying things which we would not ordinarily say at all. Then what happens? Buddhi nashat pranashyati. Last stage is pranasha. Prana means the life, person's life will be ruined. In the Vivek Chudamani, Shankara gives a very nice example, imagery of how one thing leads to another if desire is not controlled. He creates an imagery of a child dribbling a ball, 5-6-year-old child playing with a ball, dribbling it on the top of a staircase. Imagine that one. This Vivek Chudamani, verse number 325. The child is dribbling a ball, top of a staircase. And by mistake, if the ball goes to one step below, then it will not bounce back to the same level. Child cannot reach it. The child has to go down one step to catch up with the ball. Then the ball will go back to one more step down, and child cannot reach. So child has to go down one step, chasing the ball. This downward chasing of the ball will continue until the ball goes to the basement level, floor level, where it cannot go any further down. Child also goes there. That's what happens to human life. If you cannot catch the desire as soon as it arises in the mind, or preferably prevent it from arising in the mind, if you cannot do that one, once the desire arises in the mind, we go downward step by step and we get caught up in a downward spiral from which it is very difficult to extricate ourselves. Many famous people, wealthy people, rich people, powerful people enjoying position, power, fame, wealth, everything. Many people are sitting in jail this moment because they did not know how to deal with desire, how to control the desire. That is what happens if we don't control the desire. The life goes down and down in a downward spiral, and we end up in the last bottom. From there, we cannot go down any further. We go to the rock bottom, life will go. End up in the hospital or jail or some worse place. So that is why one has to be constantly vigilant about our thoughts. What kind of thoughts are coming in my mind? The moment some desire arises, then we should catch it right then and deal with it appropriately. How to deal with desires, we'll go to that's the last section, we'll deal with that one. There are several things we can do to deal with desire. Before we do that, we should understand why we should give up desires. If you know why it is important to give up desire, then we can understand and we can deal with the desires better. First, 3 reasons are there why we have to give up desires. First thing is, desire is an affliction. It's a disease, it's an imperfection. What, as we saw before, desire means ignorance of our true nature. Why desire comes? Because we are not aware of our true nature, which is infinite, eternal, pure consciousness, Sachidananda, Brahman. We are that. Because we are not aware of it at this moment, desire comes. So desire itself is a weakness, it's a disease, it's an affliction. Desire does not leave us in peace. Sri Ramakrishna's parable, you remember, this how desire causes robs away peace of mind. there was a kite, and the kite caught a fish, and it was holding the fish in its beak, and it was looking for a place to eat the fish. On the top of a tree or somewhere, it has to sit down and eat the fish. The fish was in its beak. The kite is looking for a place to stop and eat the fish. What happened was, hundreds of crows followed the kite, chased the kite, because they all wanted to catch the fish that was in the kite's beak. Wherever the kite went, the crows followed them, cawing, and gave the kite no peace, left the kite in no peace. Wherever the kite went, the hundreds of crows followed it, chasing it, wanting to snatch away the fish that it was holding in its beak. Finally, it went on from place to place. Crows were chasing. It became so tired, and the fish fell off from its beak. The moment fish fell off from the kite's beak, all the crows went after the fish and left the kite alone. Peace. Fish is the desire. As long as there is desire in our minds, there is no peace. There is no peace. Robs us of our peace. Moment we rob the desire, total peace will come. The kite was left alone. Crows went after the fish. Kite went and sat on a tree top and enjoyed the peace. So desire is an affliction. It does not leave us in. If fulfill it, one problem will come. Don't fulfill it, another problem will come, as we saw before. One reason. There's a very nice phrase in the Taittiriya Upanishad. It comes about 9 times. The phrase is akama hataha. Kama means desire. Akama hataha means one who is not afflicted by a desire. Desire is an affliction. If a person does not have desire, he is the happiest person. A person without any desire is the happiest person, because nothing bothers him. He is established in peace of the self, the joy of the self. Second reason why we have to give up desire is, if we fulfill the desire, we'll encounter endless misery and will get caught up in the cycle of birth and death. Desire propels us to do action. Desire makes us to, all actions are propelled by desire, motivated by desire. If there is no desire, there is no action, as we saw in verse 317 in Bhagavad Gita. Tasya karyam na vidyate. They make us do action. When you do perform action, there will be karma phala, result of action will come. And to experience the result of action, we have to take birth again. And then in that next birth also, same desires will come, same action will be done, it will continue. So the cycle of transmigration, birth after birth, will continue endlessly. If you don't know how to handle desires, how to give up desires, if you do not catch desire just as it is arising in your mind and control it, our ignorance of self perpetuates, and suffering will continue life after life, and we'll be caught up in this endless cycle of transmigration, life after life. Second reason why we have to give up desire. Third reason why we have to give up desire, desires are a great obstacle to spiritual life. No progress can be made in spiritual life unless we make a strong effort to overcome unhelpful adharmic desires, control the desires. So these are the 3 reasons. There are other reasons why we have to give desire. These are the 3. Now we go to the last section. How to give up desire. This is a big section. A lot of things we can do to give up desires. I have a list of 6 things that we can do to give up desires, become free from desires. First thing to do, when a desire arises in the mind, catch it right in the beginning. Don't let it manifest itself and become strong. The moment when desire comes in the mind, pause, reflect. Pause and reflect. Don't impulsively jump to fulfill the desire. The moment it comes, wait, let me see. Pause and reflect. Ask several questions before fulfilling the desire. What kind of desire is it? It is a dharmic desire. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, verse 11, 7:11, easy to remember. Sri Krishna says, Dharma viruddho bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshambha desire that is not opposed to dharma. Such desires are good. I am that desire, he says. So if it is a dharmic desire, then we can think about fulfilling it. Will it help me? Those things we can consider. If it is an adharmic desire, bad desire, then we should say firmly no to that one. First thing. Second thing is we have to inquire, if I fulfill the desire, how much happiness will I get? And what is the impact of fulfilling this desire? It may bring me happiness if I fulfill the desire, but does it cause any harm, loss, or pain or discomfort to other beings? It may make me happy, but if it makes other people unhappy, or if it causes damage to the environment, animals and plants, then that desire we should not fulfill. The impact of fulfilling my desire, though it may bring me happiness, but does it cause any negative impact on other beings, including animals, plants, and nature? That we have to question, we have to examine. One example I can give is fireworks. A lot of money is spent in fireworks on July 4th and other celebrations. Enjoying the fireworks, it creates noise to neighbors. Neighbors cannot sleep, so much noise. And it causes the environmental pollution, environment damage to environment. And it's very short-lived. How long does the firework last? Only a few seconds, not even a couple of minutes. So is it worthwhile spending all that money and effort in enjoying fireworks? Though it may bring me happiness for a few seconds, what is the damage it causes to environment and to in discomfort it causes to other people? Those things, that kind of reflection has to be done before fulfilling the desire. That is one thing. Pause and reflect and discriminate. Second thing we have to do, 6 things we have to do. Second thing is replace a bad desire with a good desire, but a better desire. I give a couple of examples how to replace one desire with another desire. For example, example number 1. If you want to listen to music, desire comes to listen to music. Then instead of listening to all kinds of music, which where the lyrics are profane lyrics, and which increase the desire for sensual pleasures, obscenity, all those things are there in some kind of music. Instead of them, listen to devotional music. Still listen to music. Devotional music purifies the mind, enhances our devotion. That is better. You still fulfill the desire, but in a different way. Substitute a better desire instead of another kind of desire. Example 2. If you feel like traveling, now traveling is not possible because of COVID virus. When it becomes possible to travel, instead of going to Las Vegas or Atlantic City, places where people want to enjoy gambling, they go. Travel to some place of pilgrimage. You still travel. Don't curb the desire. Fulfill the desire, but in a different way. Go to Vedanta Society. Come to Vedanta Society of Greater Washington, D.C. We have a very big guest house. A lot of people can stay there. But wait until the COVID desire, good COVID problem subsides. Third example. If you feel like watching a movie, watch a movie that depicts the life and teachings of a holy person. Instead of all kinds of movies which are profanity, violence, and all those things, watch a good movie which depicts the life of a holy person, life and teachings of a holy person. One more example. If you feel like eating ice cream or cake or carrot cake, already have taken 1 scoop of ice cream, already have taken 1 piece of cake, and the desire comes to eat one more piece of cake, then instead of eating carrot cake, eat a piece of carrot. It is good for health, good for eyesight. So substituting one desire with a better desire, self-fulfilling the desire. That's the second way to handle desires. Third way to handle desires is easy. We don't have to spend much time on it. Seeking holy company. The company we keep has a strong influence on our personality. Instead of mixing with all kinds of people who are interested in movies and parties, we mix with fellow seekers, means other devotees, with holy people. Suppose I cannot find any holy person or people who are interested in spiritual life, then we can read a book about a holy person and put his life, book about a saint and a saint's teaching. That also uplifts the mind. Even looking at the picture of a holy person or a saint or an incarnation curbs the evil tendencies of the mind. Sri Ramakrishna says, keep photos of holy people in your house. Fourth thing we have to do, prayer. The power of prayer is very well known. Don't have to spend much time, and we don't have much time left also. Prayer helps to purify the mind and makes our mind calm and pure and free from desire and other impurities. There's so many kinds of prayers. Prayer need not be only in Sanskrit. Sanskrit can be in any language, can be in English, it can be in any language. Or you can use your own words to pray to God. It doesn't have to be a known prayer. You can use your own words to pray to God. Prayer purifies the mind and removes the desires from our mind. Fifth one, chanting God's name or doing japa. God's name carries God's infinite power. The name and the named are one, Sri Ramakrishna says. By japa alone, one can reach the highest goal. Swami Virajananda Ji Maharaj, who got his mantra diksha from Holy Mother when he was a young boy, who got his sannyasa from Swamiji, he was at one time able to perform 125,000 repetitions of japa in one day. For some time he did that one. You cannot do that much japa. Holy Mother herself did 100,000 japa every day, getting up at 2 a.m. every morning. We cannot do that many numbers of repetition, but as much as possible, if you repeat God's name, that will remove the impurities from our mind. Japa itself can take us all the way to the highest goal. Sri Ramakrishna says, Gospel page 138. If a man repeats the name of God, his body, mind, and everything will become pure. Repeat his name, and all the sins will disappear. Thus you will destroy lust, anger, and desire for creature comforts, etc. If you repeat God's name, our desires will become less and less. And I'll skip a few things because we're out of time. Last thing, how to control desire. Change the environment. Change the conversation. If people are talking about all kinds of things which are not helpful, change the conversation. If you cannot do that one, leave the place. There are many other things we can do to deal with the desires in a constructive way. Now we'll stop here and we have a couple of minutes for questions.
Yes, we have a little bit of time for questions coming through chat or through our sidebar.
I don't see any hand raised, Mataji.
I have one question. Swami, you gave us a lot to think about, but there are desires, but then there are also addictions. And how does a spiritual aspirant work through addiction?
Addiction comes because of repeated fulfillment of desires, unable to control desire in the beginning, and it comes back again and again, stronger each time, and we keep on fulfilling it. So that's how addiction comes. When addiction comes, it has to be treated. You have to seek recourse or treatment for it. And of course, if a person who is very strongly addicted to alcohol or something, if you tell him you should repeat God's name, he may or may not be able to accept. He will not be able to do that one. He says, "What is God's name? I want to drink." In that case, when that stage has already come, one has to seek professional help to deal with the addiction. When it becomes a little bit less manageable, then we can slowly introduce other thoughts.
Very good.
Anything else we can do, Dr. Sushil?
I've got one coming. One question coming from
Ramakrishna. I'll unmute, Mataji.
Through the chat.
Yes. Swamiji,
Ah,
Yeah, go ahead.
greetings, Swamiji.
great.
Wonderful discourse about desires. One question is, in the early stages when I cannot distinguish about whether the desire is dharmic, though I can make a major distinction, if I'm not able to understand the consequences of the desire, whether it's going to create harm or not, do I just go with that broader classification, just go with fulfilling the desire by leaving the fruits of action up onto God? Could you help me there a little bit?
If there is a doubt whether it's a good desire or bad desire, you can seek help from a fellow seeker or your guru or teacher and see how to handle with this one. But there are clear indications in the scriptures how to distinguish between good desire and bad desires. And sometimes if it is not very clear, then better to replace it with a well-known better desire than to fulfill it.
Okay,
There are
thank
ways
you.
of replacing one desire with another desire, which say known to be a safer desire, that you can fulfill the desire, still you will fulfill the desire, but you will not be in a doubt whether it is good or bad. You know it is a good desire.
Thank you.
We have another question from Prasun Bhattacharya.
Hmm.
Hiring for promotions, buying big houses, luxury cars, are these bad desires, even though they don't harm anyone in the society?
I didn't understand. Please repeat again.
If we have a desire to buy a big house, a luxury car, are these
Okay.
bad desires, even though they don't harm anybody?
It doesn't harm anybody. But what happens is we need a house to stay. We need a car to drive. We need clothes to wear. All those things are necessities. But how much? We have to ask the question. If you already have a house, if it is enough for the people living in the house, why to buy a bigger house? Bigger house means more maintenance and more worry. The more things we have, our mind is occupied with the things in maintaining the things. So instead of thinking about God, we'll be thinking about maintaining the house, property. The more things we have, more mind is distracted in maintaining those, keeping those things. If you have one house, it is enough. Some people have 3 or 4 houses. One house is in Maryland, one house in Calcutta, one in Bangalore, one in Florida for winter months. So many things if you have, you can only stay in one place at a time. You can stay in only one house at a time. Having more, though it is not, it does not cause any problem to anybody else. You spend your own money, you buy more. Keeping more things is harmful to spiritual life. This is called aparigraha. There is a discipline called aparigraha. Patanjali talks about this also. Aparigraha means keeping the minimum necessary things, maybe a little bit more for householders, but not much more, because they serve as distractions, and you'll be worried about those houses, those extra cars, and other property you have, and that much less time you have to think about God. Aparigraha means keeping minimum possessions, not accepting anything which is not really absolutely necessary. Simplify our life. That is good for spiritual life. Having more is not necessarily good for spiritual life, though it does not create any problem for other people.
One last question here, because it is a question. I've received statements and we're just taking questions. Currently in my spiritual life, there is a pull. I know desires are not good, but still sometimes I give way to my desires. How to overcome this pull?
Sometimes desire comes and you fulfill the desires.
Yes.
Up to some point, it's okay. Sri Ramakrishna had desires. He tells us how you overcome the desire. At one point, he had a desire to wear an embroidered shawl. He had a desire to smoke a hookah, gudgudi, and he desired to wear a chain or something. And yes, Mathur Babu he provided all those things. And he wore the shawl and he smoked the gudgudi, and he said to his mind, yes, this is what it means, this satisfaction it gives. This is what it means to wear a shawl, gold embroidered shawl. This is what it means to smoke the hookah. And this is enough. Then afterwards he said, this is enough. He gave it up. So to some extent, we don't have to curb the desire. Curbing desire is not a good thing. Repression is not good thing. In the third chapter of the Gita, verse number 33, Shri Krishna asked the question, Nigraha kim karishyati? If you have a desire, if you try to suppress it, it will create more harm. The better way is to pause and reflect and replace it with a less harmful desire. Repression is not good.
Thank you, Swami.
Simple desires, like Sri Ramakrishna said, simple desire like wanting to have a cup of tea every now and then. So harmless desires, we can fulfill those things, no problem.
Swami, would you like to end with a chant, or should we go directly to waving of the lights? How would you like to do that?
A short closing prayer.
Very good.
Om asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritangamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O Divine Lord, please lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from darkness of ignorance to light of knowledge. Lead us from death to immortality. Om Peace. May there be peace and joy in our hearts. Adhyatmika Shanti. May there be peace and harmony amongst all beings. Adi Bhavatika Shanti. May there be peace in nature. Adi Daivika Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat Sarvam Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.